So, demon hosts and poxbursters really belong in their own tier, if I'm being honest with you, because 90% of the time you encounter these two, they aren't doing anything. But the 1 in 10 games when they are something you have to worry about, they are such an overwhelmingly dominating presence that the entire game warps around them. And if they get to do what they're trying to do, like you actually have to fight them and, get hurt by them, you're pushing it close to a wipe with most groups. Poxbursters instantly kill you off ledges, destroy wounds, have health the entire team. A single Poxburster can, if they get you right after a Medicaid drop down, they can turn a full reset, we are basically back up to full, into we're even worse than we were before we started situation. Demon hosts, you actually have to fight them, with 90% of groups, especially pub groups, basically everyone's taking a full half health worth of corruption and 2 people are dying. That's just like every single time. When demon hosts are on the field, the only thing you really need to do is either stay back in the room behind them to make sure you don't activate them by accidentally shooting in their direction, or immediately locate them, tag them, and then spam pings on where the team needs to go to get past them until everyone runs past. As long as people do one of those 2 things, demon hosts are never really a problem. With poxbursters, if you really want to never get hit, everyone should hold up in some kind of corner until you know it's been dealt with and you can push it off to the side. Okay, now let's get into the actual enemies. These 2 are very special. I just want to really reiterate that. These 2 are very, very special. And if I could put them in their own tier, I would. So, Flamers are the most dangerous enemy in the game. The higher level of a player you become, the more you kind of recognize this because of their mechanics. Oh, also, yeah, this is in left to right, most dangerous to least dangerous order. So, Flamers do not shoot a fire trail at you, leaving a trail of fire behind them. That's just not how a Flamer works. They actually just spawn a continuous puddle underneath you. That scared the shit out of me. Anyway, they spawn a continuous puddle underneath you that every tick adds a new puddle. So let's say you're standing 15 meters away from this guy. He is spawning fire directly underneath you. It's not like there's a travel time or any of that shit. No. He goes, time to burn! And then the fire starts appearing underneath you. And I think it's like every 0.75 seconds or whatever for a tick. However long... The ticks for the fire spawn are the same ticks that you take damage increments from the fire. So every time your toughness would tick down in the fire, it's spawning more of it. And this is a problem because anything short of just running directly up to the flamer leads to these large trails of fire that cover half the arena. This is why in my flamer video, I highly recommend just fucking running up to the flamer. Flamers will cause most wipes, because they usually aren't alone. Flamers with a bulwark is an insta-lose situation a lot of the time. You absolutely have to outmaneuver them. And if you can't maneuver around, you say you're back to the wall, good luck, buddy. Bombers are the second most annoying thing, and second most likely thing to cause a wipe. Bombers and Flamers together just create this death spiral that's really hard to get out of. One thing about bombers is bombers will always run after throwing. It's very rare for bombers to just stand still and chuck bombs, and they're not supposed to do that. In a video I have coming out soon, I showcase how the bomber AI works, and it's pretty easily manipulatable, actually. The way bombers become a problem is people try to stay and fight in the same area. Really, it's just people don't fucking move. That's the problem. Treat a bomber like a gunner, because they basically have a very similar AI package. Just run away from the fire, preferably out of the room entirely. That forces them to reposition, which forces them out of those bad, shitty spots where they just keep ducking in and out of cover. And snipers are the last thing. Now, you're going to notice something all 3 of these guys have in common. They are all massive area denial enemies. Things in this game, like crushers, that are just really deadly in terms of their damage output and really hard to kill, are not dangerous at all. You could fight 100 of them at the same time. I literally have a video of me doing that. But I would not ever live for very long versus 100 snipers. Because Tide games are all about managing space and mobility within that space. You fight for space so you can stay as mobile. The more space you have, the more mobile you can be. The more mobile you can be, the less likely you are to get hit, and the more attacks you can sneak in that otherwise would have hit you. So enemies that deny you that mobility and that maneuverability and they consume space are really, really dangerous. And in that same... So, one thing about snipers. Snipers actually are pretty unique in terms of how their AI works. They will sometimes just straight up hold a sightline forever. The only time snipers tend to run at you is if there's gunners around them or other snipers. A lone sniper, unless you stay out of their sightline for a substantial time, will just sit there and hold the angle like they're a fucking TF2 sniper. Although you can slide under them, dodge their shot, there is a lot to counterplay them, but mechanically speaking, you really do need a long-range option to deal with them. You cannot just hope that your team is going to deal with these guys. They are far too dangerous. Reapers are S tier if you're bad at the game, but the better you get, the less threatening Reapers are because of suppression. So, yeah, that's another thing. You can't suppress any of these for some reason. You can't suppress a Reaper. And 6 Reapers stacked up is like a death sentence for a lot of people. But let's say you have a trauma or any staff really, or any machine gun on veteran with the suppression nodes. Just a couple clicks in their general direction and they're going to stop shooting. I cover Reapers a lot more in depth in their own dedicated video, but they're big, they're bulky, and the fact that they push you while suppressing you makes fighting back against them once they're locked onto you really fucking hard. You really want to work with your team to deal with these guys. Bullworks are the exact same thing. Bullworks on their own are like down here. Bullworks are a completely non-threatening enemy. It's the bullshit that Bullworks enable. Shotgunners also... Oh yeah, by the way, I am 90% confident that Shotgunners and Bullworks spawn together. Because I always see, if there's an ambient Bulwark that's just on the map and not part of a 4 Bulwark rush that spawns in by the director, ambient Bulwarks, I've noticed every single time they have Shotgunners with them. Just a fun little thing that I've noticed. But Bulwarks enable bullshit. 3 Flamers behind a Bulwark is retarded, frankly. Ragers have such high damage output, and you need constant mental fortitude and focus to deal with a Rager. If Ragers are either down here, and you just kill 5 of them with 1 magazine and they're not a threat, or they spawn 10 meters away from you and you have to be in close quarters with them, and their damage output is so high, and because of the, again, mechanics, they have 2 weapons, they're always hitting you twice, they always deal toughness bleed through, apart from like 2 attacks in specific, but you are not weaving in between that shit, trust me, you're not, no one is. So all their attacks are going to deal substantial toughness bleed through. If you make a mistake versus a Rager, it's extremely punishing. If you make a mistake versus, like, you know, a Shotgunner, nothing really comes of it unless you make multiple mistakes. Beast of Nurgles are far and away the most dangerous bosses. I also think they're the worst designed bosses. The fact that their weak spot almost demands that you either abuse... You have 3 ways to deal with a Beast of Nurgle. The easiest is just let your team take aggro, get vomited on, then turn it around, which sucks, but that is the best way. The next best way is to get them locked into animations. Something like, whenever they growl or get them into the vomit. But we're going to talk about that in a second. The third and final way, and this way requires the most skill, is get very close to them in melee and make them vomit and then slide, like dodge to the left and melee their weak spot. They take extra damage from melee. It's like a 2 or 3 times multiplier to their melee weak spot. And they cannot attack for about 3 seconds after puking. So, you know how you dance a Plague Ogryn? You can do the exact same thing with a Beast of Nurgle. The difference is, all a Plague Ogryn does is take your toughness away so you can back off. Beast of Nurgle slow you, almost immediately follow-up grab you, and completely demolish you. So you can totally stun lock a Beast of Nurgle in a corner with little to no space. The problem is, if you fuck up just one time, it is far more punishing than all these other bosses. And again, they have the flamer effect of area denial, the tankiness of a crusher. Honestly, I feel like Beasts of Nurgle kind of reside, like, on the borderline between A and S tier. Like, they are very dangerous. Trappers are the only disabler that actually matters, if I'm being frank with you. They are, you know, and they only matter because they're jank and the most prone to sound bugs. Really, if Trappers had the same sound profile as a mutant or a dog, they'd be, like, down here. They would be whatever. But the fact that they don't, and so here's the thing, right? Mutants push you back. So a mutant charges into you, you go flying back because he carries you back. So mutants, more likely than not, push you closer to your team. They can also throw you out of bad situations. Dogs just immobilize you wherever you are. Trappers actively push you closer to enemies while having the most sound bugs, while being the hardest to dodge due to their projectile laggy nature. So trappers are like the three things you don't want to see. Gunners are just gunners. They're incredibly easy to deal with, and people who... I always find it funny when people say shit like, "Oh, bro, the only thing that still kills me is the occasional gunner." Yeah, you probably don't have a good flowchart versus them, or you're just depending on things like gunner damage resistance to bail you out. The only time gunners can kill you is if you severely misplay. They are a massive punishment for bad positioning, and that's really all they are. They're not a threat at long range. They're not a threat if you can suppress them. They're not a threat if you stack a lot of toughness and toughness damage reduction. There's so many ways to borderline completely nullify them as a threat. The only way you really are worried about them is if there's 7 of them stacked up and you're way out of position. Which, by the way, gunner damage resistance won't save you from. Just stop putting yourself in that position. Chaos spawns are... They are the second... So they're not as hard to dance as a Beast of Nurgle, but they're not as easy to dance as a Plague Ogryn. Subsequently, they are more punishing to mess up the dance with than a Plague Ogryn, and significantly less than a Beast of Nurgle. I think all the bosses are very well balanced and incredibly well designed, except for the Beast of Nurgle weak spot. I really do wish that whenever he opened his mouth, be it to vomit or whatever, that also counted as a weak spot. You know, kind of like the Resident Evil 4 Sadler boss, like the final boss. Shotgunners are a complete non-issue. There's so many weapons that, because they tend to go into single file, just delete crowds of these guys. I'm not even going to bother talking about them. Crushers and Maulers are the same enemy. Literally, they're just the same enemy. And they're literally just as big of non-issues as one another. You just burn them down. They're not even dangerous when they come in mixed horde packs. You literally just kill them. Really, I don't need to talk about the rest of this, do I? The rest of this shit is garbage. Mutants take you closer to your team or throw you out of bad situations. You can also hard counter them by staying near walls. Plague Ogryns are Plague Ogryns. Literally, one person can just aggro it, drag it away from the team, and then dance it forever. Dogs are dogs. They're total jokes and memes. And this boss, what's going to kill you in this boss fight is getting swamped by horde and elites that spawn on the sides, not the actual boss.